Will Hammock and Todd Klein back with you here on GPR. Just a reminder to join us online at GwinnettPrepRally.com, where we have the world famous message board and video highlights. And you can also keep up with GPR on Twitter and on our Facebook fan page. So be sure to give us a like. The Buford Wolves are seeking their 5th consecutive state championship, and they've gotten off to a very impressive 5-0 start with a stingy defense that has recorded 3 shutouts and given up only 14 points. One of the standout performers for the Wolves is senior linebacker Dillon.
This is one of the most impressive linebackers in the country.
He's been a force on defense and a huge part of Buford's 4 straight titles. Dillon Lee has been creating mayhem for opposing offenses for the past few seasons, and plenty of people at the college level have tried to recruit this talented linebacker.
It was fun, but at the same time it was exhausting, having to go and drive everywhere every weekend. But I had fun, it was really cool to go see, a bunch of different universities and see, all the coaches and what everyone had to offer.
Dillon's a big kid. He's all of 6'3" and then some, 230 pounds and extremely athletic. Guy moves really, really well, handles space. Athletically, there's not a lot he can't do.
And that's the opinion of most college coaches who've seen him play, including Alabama head coach Nick Saban, who convinced Dillon that Tuscaloosa was the perfect fit for his game.
They have the best environment for me, to go play football, which is what I want to do, is go, compete and win games at the next level. And I feel like they have the best coaching staff, to develop me as a player.
I think it's an adjustment for every kid when you go play at that level, but certainly with his size and speed and skill set, I look for him to be able to make that adjustment.
One of the biggest honors that Dillon's received was being named to the 2011 High School Butkus Award watch list, which means he's one of the top 51 linebackers in the whole country and validates all the hard work he's put into football throughout his high school career.
It means a lot, being named that, on the watch list. I hope I'm doing it justice, and showing that I should be on the list. And, hopefully I win it.
It's been a big deal on the field. He's playing great on defense, and he's a guy who makes plays and produces, and he's been a guy who's done that for us for a long time.
Well, Will, we know he's an excellent player, but all my Georgia friends ask me, why is he going to Alabama instead of the University of Georgia?
Yeah, I get that a lot from my Georgia buddies too. It's a good question. He grew up in a Georgia family, and he obviously grew up a Georgia fan. His brother plays at Georgia, so you'd think he'd be a lock for Georgia, but Georgia didn't come into the equation until late. They didn't offer him until very late, and it's got to be offensive to a high school kid like that when your brother's already there. And obviously, if you have offers from Alabama, Florida State, all of these other great places, you're quite a talent. So if Georgia didn't come into the equation until late, doesn't make that offer until late, I can't really blame a kid for not really favoring the team that didn't really want him at first.
Well, time now for Will's World. We put 60 seconds on the clock, get into the mind of our very own Will Hammock, and it's brought to you by Breda Pest Management.
Yeah, shifting gears to basketball a little bit first here. Maya Moore, certainly has a lot of honors in her career. Another one came this week, WNBA Rookie of the Year, just a great award for her. #1 overall draft pick, so there's a lot of pressure on her coming into this season, and she definitely delivered. Really played her best later in the season. She's starting to become what I think is going to be a superstar in the WNBA. Certainly a very marketable figure, signing that big contract with Nike, so it's exciting for her. A big loss this week for Mill Creek, and they really missed John Russ in this game. I think he's a guy that really leads that offense both ways with his running and with his passing, and they have so many young, skilled position guys on that team. They really need his leadership on the field, and he really would have helped them in this game, but they really got to get him back this week against Norcross to have any chance against a very good Norcross Blue Devils team. And speaking of Norcross Blue Devils, Domonique Mason, number 82, you see him here hitting the running back there for Duluth. Domonique's having a great season. He's a guy that's been a starter the past few seasons at tight end, and that Norcross, of course, had those couple of D1 defensive ends last year, so they didn't need him as much on defense, but he's been a force so far at defensive end this year. He's making plays all over the place at defensive end. Every game he's got 3, 4, 5 tackles for losses, so great season so far for Domonique.
And like you said, Domonique playing well, that Norcross defense playing well. They're going to have to continue to play well if they want to win a region title. It starts this week against a Mill Creek team that can be very explosive on offense, and then we have North Gwinnett lurking. Does Norcross, does their defense has what it takes to be a region champ?
Yeah, I think they do. They're a very good defensive team, and you wondered what they were going to have. They lost that very good front seven, lost pretty much everybody, and then they lost their returning starter there in Tanner Maloof to an injury. So really a completely new front seven, but there's a lot of talent and a lot of depth over there at Norcross, and that's what we've seen so far. They've been very impressive on defense, and I think it's a good enough defense to help them to the region title.
Time now to focus on standout performances. So let's move on to this week's building blocks. They're presented by Britt's Home Furnishing. And first up is Joe Jones from North Gwinnett.
Yeah, we talked about Scotty Hush gets a lot of headlines, but North Gwinnett certainly has a good rushing attack. Joe Jones kind of had a breakout game with 3 touchdowns. He's a guy that carries the ball really well. So does Donnie Miles. Both those guys are exceptional running backs, and they're really going to help North down the road to be a balanced football team. But Joe Jones was big in this one. He's such a big, powerful kid. Very tough to tackle, and I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be relied on heavily this season.
Well, we talked about that Parkview rushing offense. Will, it looked like old school Parkview as Chris Carson had a huge game against Shiloh.
Yeah, he's really developed and matured into a great running back. He had an excellent game here against Shiloh. Really made the difference. 177 rushing yards and the 3 scores. Obviously, Patrick Flo made some good runs in there too, but Chris was really the guy that carried the load and really got Parkview a huge win to kick off the Region 8 schedule.
And we talk about Norcross, their defense. Well, their offense had a standout performer as well.
Yeah, he's really, I think, out of all their playmakers, I think he's maybe the most explosive guy they have. He's a guy that can catch the ball, an excellent running back, just has unbelievable speed, and he's a guy that can, it really scares opposing defenses. I thought they could have used him more last year when he was a sophomore. They used him on kick returns, and he was very dangerous. But he's a guy that you're going to see playing at the Division I level here in a couple of seasons.
Well, those were all great performances, Will. Who else played well last week that we should mention?
I think we have to go back to the game in the Georgia Dome with South and Central. Mason Hart had a great game at quarterback for South Gwinnett. And a kid we haven't mentioned yet, Eman Westmoreland, threw for 569 yards for Central Gwinnett in that game, and that was the 2nd highest total in Georgia high school history. So a great game for Eman, just couldn't get the victory for their team.
Time now for Will to take a look into his crystal ball as we preview some key matchups on the gridiron this week. It's brought to you by Tommy Lee Carpets. We call it Beat the Post. We give you a chance to do exactly that. Will, we start off with Brookwood playing at Central Gwinnett. That one looks really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think Brookwood has defended the spread pretty well. I think they'll do okay against that defensively. I think it comes down to will the Central defense be able to stop Brookwood's rushing attack, and I think this is probably the game that Brookwood gets well on offense and pulls out a win.
Well, Collins Hill needs to get well in the win column. Does that happen this week at Duluth?
It's going to be a tough game. I think the loser of this game is out of the playoffs, and to be honest, I think Duluth's playing a little better football right now. I like the Wildcats to pull out a close one.
And then we have Decula playing at Shiloh. Does Shiloh have another upset in them?
I don't think so. I think Decula is a very good football team. They're going to be factoring into the top couple of teams in this region, so I like the Falcons. Mountain
View gets that big win over Mill Creek. Their reward, a big-time contest against Peachtree Ridge.
It's going to be tough to come back and get another upset for the Bears. They're going to give it their best shot, but I really think Peachtree Ridge is one of the better teams in Region 7, so I like the Lions.
If John Russ is back, this one looks really interesting. Mill Creek hosting Norcross.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. If John Russ is back, I think Mill Creek definitely has a chance. Without him, I think it's going to be very tough against that Norcross defense, but I still like the Blue Devils. I think overall they're the better team.
And then as far as sorting out a region in Region 8-5A, Parkview at South. South got that big win over Central. Suddenly, this is a pretty important game.
It is. I think it's going to be a definite factor in who makes the playoffs in that region. And I think Parkview is really playing great football right now. I like the Panthers to win.
All right, we're out of time, but please join us next week for more highlights and features on Gwinnett Prep Rally every Tuesday through Friday right here on GCPS TV. And you can go to GwinnettPrepRally.com for all the scheduling details. For Will Hammock and all of us here at GPR, I'm Todd Klein. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you under the lights.
Grab some wood there, bub.